Well, welcome, welcome. We are so delighted that you are joining us this evening. I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to come online. I see the count is going up and up and up. We are so excited that you're joining us tonight for our webinar, Making It Through COVID-19. For business owners, entrepreneurs, it is our pleasure as the School of Business and Leadership at Regent University to host that for you, with an amazing panel that I will introduce very, very shortly to me. My name is Doris Gomez, and I am the Dean of the School of Business and Leadership. And it is truly my joy to be able to offer this webinar to you this evening. Thank you for taking the time. We are all safely and socially distancing, so we are all greeting you from our individual homes. So we are in this together. None of us is exempt from what COVID-19 is doing across the globe. And so we understand the tremendous pressures that are on businesses, that are on entrepreneurs, on startups. Many questions still remain unanswered. When is the economy going to start up again? When can we go back? Will we be able to go back? How are we going to make it even to the time when the economy is going to be back in business? Our desire is to really encourage you today to bring resources to you that are hopefully very, very helpful to you. We love our business community. We have a deep appreciation for entrepreneurs and those that the small businesses in our communities. You are the lifeblood of all of our communities. You employ people, and I can only imagine. I've been a business owner myself. I grew up with a very entrepreneurial family, so I know we think business 24/7. We worry about our employees, and when something like that happens, it is just inconceivable, because you don't just worry about your own business, your own well-being, but you worry about your employees. Your employees are like family to most of you. And so your heart breaks for them, and you want to maintain them. You know they need their paycheck, that you know they need their health insurance and their income because they have children, and they need to put food on the table. So the issues that you are faced with are tremendous, but we are here to come alongside of you. So thank you for joining us this evening. I'm gonna introduce very, very quickly and very briefly, because I believe each of our wonderful panelists will introduce themselves in greater detail. But we have put together a tremendous panel for you this evening as we are talking about finances, the financial market. What can we do now in innovative ways to prepare us for re-entry? And certainly also, is there anything we can do now in terms of digital marketing, moving parts or all of our business online, right? So many of us had to do it. We here at Regent University, we've entire operation online, and that was within a week basically, and we did it well, but we were prepared. And so we want to help you to be prepared and to do so as quickly as possible. So as panelists today, we're going to have Dr. Andrew Root. Dr. Root, wave so they see you and know who you are. Dr. Root is a tremendous expert when it comes to finance, small business finance, personal finance, and also big business finance. He spent years on Wall Street with Goldman Sachs. He is a financial expert. We are delighted that he's with us. He teaches in our MBA program, and he will be a tremendous asset to you. We also have Dr. Gary Oster. Dr. Oster, wave, so everybody knows you. Dr. Oster is our innovation and entrepreneurship expert. Dr. Oster, before he came to Regent University in the School of Business and Leadership, was working with several high-tech companies and corporations, and he truly is Mr. Innovation. He's willing to try anything, and he has worked with so many of our students on tremendous startups, and so I know he has a lot to offer you, and certainly welcomes your question. We have Mary Cromer, a wonderful friend of Regent University. She is a digital marketing expert. She has worked with big corporations and she has worked with small businesses. And now is the time, right, in this season of COVID-19, of a global pandemic, where digital marketing and online business as much as possible is key. So those are our panelists, and moderating this amazing group of people will be Dr. Greg Stone. Dr. Greg Stone is a gifted moderator, but he also serves on the faculty of the School of Business and Leadership, and he is also the program director of our MBA program. And he has done tremendous work with people with disabilities and helping them how to create business opportunities for them and work opportunities. He has a tremendous heart, a tremendous understanding for entrepreneurship in particular and startups. So I think you will be in the best of hands with these amazing panels. I'm gonna ask each one of you, dear panelists, to quickly introduce yourself, share with our audience anything that I might not have mentioned, but you would like them to know. And I'm gonna ask that you do so in the following order: Dr. Oster, Mary, Dr. Root, and then Dr. Stone. And then Dr. Stone, you take it away. Dr. Oster, please.
Hey, thank you. Hi, my name is Gary Oster, and before I became a college professor, I worked for a couple decades in high-tech companies, from a little two-person company all the way to a spin-off from IBM. So I've seen companies go through some very difficult times, and I hope the things that I have to say will be applicable to you regardless of where you are in the world.
Mary.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Cromer. I own a digital agency. I've been doing digital marketing since 2004, when websites weren't even an interest to most businesses that were out there. So I have been around since before Google and Facebook and YouTube and all of that good stuff. So I do have a lot of information. I'm looking forward to helping maybe answer some questions in regards to what you can do to get more online business.
My name is Andrew Root. I teach finance at Regent University. My focus prior to Regent was investment banks and hedge funds. I spent 22 years working at various banks and hedge funds. During the global financial crisis in 2008, I was at a hedge fund, and so experienced the market volatility from the investing side as well as through the businesses that we owned. My academic research interests include areas of uncertainty, which is certainly an area that we're involved in now. The demand shock that we're seeing now is much more severe than what we saw in 2008. So I look forward to sharing some insights there and taking your questions.
I'm Greg Stone. I'm a faculty member at Regent University and program director for the MBA program. These are some tremendous people tonight, and we want to get right into things and get going. So first question I'm going to throw out there, and we're seeing your questions. We're monitoring them as they're coming in. We will have a chance where we will address and certainly take time to be able to address all of those questions. But we're in the midst of this stimulus package that is being dispersed out, and it includes grants and information and loans for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Which panelists, which of you can tell me a little bit more about how that is going along, what's involved with it, and maybe where we are in all of that right now?
Yeah, maybe I can address some of that, Greg, to start, if that's okay.
Sure.
So the stimulus package, the CARES Act, included several loan programs. A lot of small business people that I talked to locally in Hampton Roads have already taken advantage of at least the application portion. So there's the payroll protection loans, so-called PPP loans. There's also the economic disaster insurance loans, the EDIL or EIDL loans, which actually by scale, in some sense, are quite a bit larger. And then the end of last week, the Federal Reserve started what they called a Main Street lending program, which may be new news to those who are actually running the businesses on Main Street. But essentially what it does is, for the first time, banks can lend to companies with revenues up to $2.5 billion. So, the vast majority of companies, and the Federal Reserve will buy 95% of the value of that loan from companies, and that's a $600 billion program. So between the $350 billion allocated in the CARES package and the $600 billion that the Fed is doing, there's almost $1 trillion of new liquidity that's on offer. How do you access that? You go to your bank. It can be the best banks to go to are probably the regional banks or the larger of your local community banks, a Southern Bank or a town bank, potentially a PNC. The national banks seem to be operating a little bit less quickly and don't have quite the personal touch with some of your relationships. So the place to go is to those banks and apply as soon as you can. There are no points for not taking the loans. In some cases, the terms are very favorable. In some cases, they're forgiven if you keep your employees on through the end of 2020. So there are several programs, unprecedented in scale and scope, very lenient in terms of terms, and the activity today would be to access that liquidity as quickly as you can through your local banks.
Mary, you've, I think, discovered or tripped across some interesting places that are dispersing some of these funds. And I know for the entrepreneur sitting out there, the 1- and 2-person mom and pop operation, this has got to seem like an overwhelming process. But what are some things, what are some systems, some companies in place that might be able to help them out on accessing these funds?
So this was in regards, oh, sorry, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just going to say, Dr. Root's right on here, because speed is of the essence. There may be additional loans coming through, but that has to run through the political process. Please know that community banks are good friends, but they're also, one of the main things is that they have to keep their risk below a certain level, whereas some of the larger banks don't have quite that difficulty. So this is one of those things that you may have to try 2 or 3 different places before you can get the kind of funding. Now's the time to do it.
Go ahead, Mary.
So what I was going to say too is there's some other ways besides just the banks. It was announced yesterday, which most small businesses are using, like Square. The businesses that are only probably doing about $3,000 in revenue a month, they use Square to process their credit cards. Well, Square, Intuit, which is your QuickBooks program, and PayPal also all became able to put out these PPP programs and the larger grant money that Andrew was talking about before. So just because your local bank may not be doing it, or you don't use a bank and you use a specific credit union that's not offering it, these other ones are offering it to any business that's out there, and there's no limit size. So that would be another avenue to go to.
Yeah, along with that, I would suggest that that you contact the vendors that supply you, because they know what's going on here. This is no secret, and everybody's being a little bit softer on their terms, especially on the length of time that they give you to pay. So it doesn't hurt at all just to pick up the phone and talk to these folks and just say, ask them if they could extend at least some of the funds that you have to pay them.
I do want to jump in here real quick because we got a question from one of our attendees. Since we are on the topic of those small business loan, and Curtis asked, are there any words of advice for the small company that may be hesitant to take advantage? I know, as a small business owner, the last thing you want to is take on debt. And that's probably what that sounds like. So can somebody talk to that? Maybe you, Andrew?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. I've had that feedback from some small business owners locally, and I think one of the things that makes for a small business owner is somebody who's very independent-minded, is quite happy to live with the consequences of their decisions, and they certainly understand the economic axiom that there is no such thing as a free lunch. So that's definitely an issue. However, in this particular case, the payroll protection loans, for example, if you are going to keep your employees on through the end of the year, that debt will be forgiven. If you say to yourself, well, I don't necessarily need the money, I hear what you're saying, but that money will go to somebody else. It may go to your competitor, who would then use it to invest in their business and outcompete you. So normally there's great points for restraint and not using debt, but in this case, the debt is very attractive. The second point I would make is look at your overall investment plan, your program, not just for right now, but what you'd like to do medium term, especially with what's changing in the economy, and look at your existing loans that are outstanding. You may be able to replace an existing loan at 2.75% with the economic disaster insurance program for something that you're paying a much higher percentage, or you may be able to access the Fed Main Street special purpose vehicle at 350 basis points over the 1% prime that they're showing. So you may be able to actually improve your capital structure by doing something with one of the vehicles that's out there. So I understand the hesitancy. There certainly is no free lunch, but when problems like this happen, like in the global financial crisis, the attitude of central bankers is they want to provide liquidity and they are socializing the cost of the crisis. So you are bearing the cost of the crisis, whether you take advantage of the program or not. So right now, there are no points for not being as aggressive as you can in accessing these funds.
This leads to an interesting question. What should a person, their business, an entrepreneur do? What's the best key principle to follow in a financial crisis?
Yeah, I mean, my view is liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. If we were a real estate crisis, it's location. If you're in an economic crisis, it's liquidity. If I was running a business today, I would assume, I would hope that certainly medical solutions or by divine intervention, the crisis ends quickly, but you have to plan for something longer than that. And that would be through the end of at least 2020. And so I would look at my cash needs based on current business levels through the end of 2020, and I would make sure that I have access to that much liquidity if at all possible. One place to do that is these loan programs. Another place to do it is if you have a stock portfolio. The market's recovered half of its drop so far. And if you're still worried about liquidity through the end of 2020, you need to raise liquidity somehow. So you can have a very solvent, vibrant, growing business, but if you don't have access to cash, your business won't be around very long. So get liquidity as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, one of the things that we can say is if it was a good idea before COVID, it's probably a good idea right now, and cash flow is the most important thing.
Gary, you raised an interesting point a few minutes ago about contacting vendors and contacting people. Right now, many small businesses, they have employees to interact with and communicate with. They have vendors to interact and communicate with. They need to go out and talk to their customers. They need to go out and approach it. And there's this tendency to want to withdraw from the world and just sit it out by yourself in isolation and not communicate until this goes away. What's your advice on how we should talk to those people we interact with as a small business?
One of the things to remember is that the people who are in charge of small and even larger businesses, you didn't bring the COVID virus on yourself. And we honestly have no real clear picture of what's going to happen after COVID. So the most important thing right now is to communicate with the people who work for you, with your employees, to communicate with vendors, to communicate with customers, and just remind them continually, you're still here, you still plan on doing business. If you can do business now, that's great, but you may have reasons, you may have to wait for a little while. So it would seem that communication is absolutely the most important thing that a small business owner can do right now.
Mary?
Greg, there was a question online about a couple of the PPP rules that I could pick up if you want.
Sure, go right ahead.
One of them is a very good question relating to independent contractors and then business who consist of independent contractors. What are the issues for PPP? If I understand the question correctly, in that case, those contractors who you may use in your business, essentially as people who perform services for you or employees, may be better off actually accessing the pandemic unemployment insurance, which is a new feature of CARES. Normally gig workers, independent contractors, self-employed do not qualify, but under the CARES Act, they do. So those individuals who are essentially contractors to a general contractor should, if there's no business to be done, should probably access unemployment insurance in a way they've never really done before. Some of them don't think about that because they've never been eligible, but they are eligible right now. And so anybody that's a contractor, an IC or a freelancer that is not working, they should be accessing unemployment insurance. And the parent level GC would not need a payroll loan for that purpose. You would need some other kind of loan to make sure that your business can survive with you at the head, but the independent contractors you employ should independently go out and get some money from the UI.
Right.
Mary, has this pandemic adversely impacted your business?
My business?
Yes.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's kind of hard for people to go to work and pay you if they're not going to work. So, I mean, that's a situation. So, but actually, I've received a lot more calls in regards to, look, people are now have a little bit more time. You're not traveling from job to job. You're at home. You have more hours to look at. What's your website look like? What's the content that's on it? How's my social media going? And they can reach out to somebody like me online to be able to get those audits and have a conversation through Zoom or whatever to say, hey, this is what we found. This is what you really want to try. Maybe we should go this way. You know, like Doris was talking about in regards to Regent. In 1 week, you guys switched everything up and went online. Dee and I did the same thing, right? All of our meetings, we didn't stop them. We went on to Zoom and we have all of our meetings on Zoom, so you still get business from those people. Other businesses can do the same thing. So for me, it's been busier the last 3 weeks that this has been going on than even before, if you can well ever imagine that. But now it's more of on a one-to-one kind of basis than it is the other one. So yes and no.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
I'd like to bring up just one little thing. I had an opportunity to study a number of companies in Louisiana after the Katrina hit that area. And there's a whole concept that we talk about in business about resiliency. And that is, how do companies snap back after disaster happens? One of the problems that they found in Louisiana, especially in quite a bit of the South, was some companies were too resilient. In other words, they tried to snap back to exactly as it was before Katrina came through. Our world has changed. It is not going to be exactly like it was before the virus came through. So this is a great time. Your mind is already going a mile a minute, but this is a great time to sit down and say, what do I really need to change about who is really important to my company as far as employees? You know, who do I have to really make sure that they stick around? So those things sound very simple, but they can determine whether your company will survive or fail.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of us have been pressed to go online or go online more. If anybody's checked in the last couple of weeks, you've noticed already there's a shortage of webcams out there in the marketplace. Just from people buying food, there's also a shortage of freezers in the marketplace. So this is certainly impacting even day-to-day living, even the most simple kinds of things that we're trying to do. And many small businesses are suddenly looking at getting online. Now, getting online is a huge kind of thing to be able to try to do. Mary, what's the best way for a small business to look at going online in some way? Is it a website? Is it social media? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? How do they figure all that out?
Well, no business should not have a website. That should be an automatic guarantee. That and a Google My Business page are the two things. If you're a local business looking for local business, a Google My Business page. Those are the two you always want to have, whether you're in this kind of a pandemic situation or you're just in general. But I think Gary is right in regards to you have to be innovative right now. You have to think about yourself, okay, if I've been doing business like this all along, what can I do now? What's going to have that next event coming up? So let's say you're a hair salon and you can't do hair right now, right? We've had this conversation. You can't do hair. What are you going to do? Maybe right now it's time to do the videos that you always thought you wanted to do so that they're available. You might have an opportunity to sell them or to sell ads on them to get money that way. Be innovative and think about what's the next step and then analyze how you've been doing it. Analyzation is going to be your biggest thing right now, determining what you've been doing, whether it's been successful, where you see the future going in regards to our new reality, right? Our new lifestyle. Can your business fit in there? If not, what parts of your business can you take with you and what parts can you make better? Go to the next step, have that social distancing involved in it, whatever that business may be.
Yeah.
Let me jump in there real quick, Mary, because there's a question that came in through our Q&A panel. And the person is asking, what would you recommend, Mary, for a small business to do with their digital marketing? Say they have a website and active Facebook page, so they have that. So what's the next step for them?
That would depend on what kind of business it is, right? They want to be, if they're active in social and they're already getting engagement in their social channels, they have a great website that shows up on Google and it's getting traffic already. Depending on what business they do, whether or not they can do business right now, right? Or whether or not they need to determine, okay, if I really can't do business right now, right? Because I'm home, what kind of business can I do that's like mine? Because I'm gonna need to develop that going forward because it's not gonna be the same old way we're gonna be from before. So right now, I would have to say, depending on the business would depend on what I would tell you and recommend that you do. But you wanna make sure that you're ready for whatever the new reality is when we're done.
Gary, what role does creativity and innovation play in this? And the thing that struck me is I just saw a story on a news feed that talked about an enterprising entrepreneur who was having trouble selling his merchandise and getting it to the end user. And so he actually set up a deal with some Uber drivers to deliver the products to the people so they got it delivered to their door. I thought that was rather innovative.
Nice.
What are some of the other kinds of things you can do right now?
Well, I think one of the things is to sit down and think of what you're doing right now and what are some possible ways to do it differently. There's going to be problems with meeting people later. There's going to be problems with transportation, problems along the supply chain. So it's a matter of perhaps you have, for the past 20 years, your company has done something a specific way. You may want to change what you're doing, or you want to change how you're doing it. Okay, so sometimes those little things, it's smart to have 3 or 4 options in the back of your mind, because we honestly don't know. We have no idea for sure what it's going to be like. So why not be prepared?
Sounds like you're saying it's a good time to take a little risk and try doing some things some different ways.
Well, it is, but the difficulty that everybody's thinking about is, I haven't got money. I don't have the cash flow. So, on one hand, we want to be conservative. On the other hand, we have to be very broad in our thinking so that we're prepared for whatever comes in the future.
One small point maybe to add to that, relating to, if you don't have money to invest, I typically think of what's going on right now in the context of the point of transaction, where the money changes hands, and the contactless commerce, that ecosystem is really going to develop very rapidly. So we all have phones now with our Apple Wallet, and a lot of times we have credit cards loaded on it. Maybe you have the Apple MasterCard, and you can not touch anything, but you can actually engage in the transaction. Some people now have Square devices that are attached to wireless devices and let the customer swipe it as opposed to actually exchanging the card physically. So those investments sometimes can be made with the payments vendors. Whoever you happen to use may be willing to fund handheld exchange contacts. And it's not necessarily that everybody will need that and that people won't be comfortable exchanging credit cards or exchanging cash, but you may end up with a significant segment of your customer base that doesn't really like contact and even a small amount of contact like that. And so now is a good time to invest either your time to try and get something where you have a partner as a vendor or your own money in speeding up contactless transactions and making sure that's not a choke point for your business going forward when things do start to improve.
It's also going to be fascinating when this thing starts to wind down, and I think it will wind down in fits and starts. But what's going to be interesting is now that people got used to having their Whopper being delivered from Burger King, you know, how will that change in the future? What our expectations are going to be from everybody that we get our products and services from. I don't think people are going to go back and say, well, I'll only go to a restaurant. We're going to want restaurants to do other services too.
Mm-hmm.
More catering.
Yes, definitely. Mary, if a small business sets up a Facebook page, I mean, goes out, creates the Facebook page,
Mm-hmm.
is that it? Is that all they have to do to be able to be successful in using Facebook to market?
No, they have to post. They have to engage with the audience. They have to do videos. They have to do image graphs. They have to put up good content that's going to get engagement. They have to invite people to like their page. They have to run ads to keep their page in front of other people. It's not a set it and forget it kind of situation. None of them are. You can't set up Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook and expect it to just automatically jumpstart for you. Those are not the ways that actually do it. You do need to engage with those systems, those channels all the time. It's like a second job.
Sounds like there's a lot of investment of time to be able to even use Facebook effectively to get it up and rolling a little bit. So I know I've seen a small baking coffee shop business that has been very successful in the last 6 months in their use of Facebook, and they're doing curbside deliveries right now and pickups, and they've got more business than they can even handle. So they've seen an increase in business just due to the flexibility of how they're delivering the product to the consumer, as well as using Facebook to put out there the things that they're making that the consumer can buy. So
sure. I mean, you can do everything on Facebook. You can set up appointments on Facebook. You can shop on Facebook. You can donate on Facebook. I mean, your whole website process can be on Facebook just like it can on your website. So, I mean, Facebook, and especially right now, if anybody's run the insight numbers for Facebook, Facebook's traffic is huge right now because nobody has anything better to do but go on Facebook every day. So before, here in Hampton Roads, we had 700 to 800,000 adults that were active on Facebook every month. Now the number's way over that. So, I mean, this would be a perfect time to actually get into Facebook and get your plan developed. What's your marketing plan going to be? Strategically set it up. Use products like Hootsuite and Canva. And you could actually right now set up your whole next 4 months in Hootsuite so that when you do start getting back in to doing things, your products aren't just stopped, right? You're still posting every day. You're still getting things done because you set it up now while you're doing nothing else.
Good points. Good points. What are some of the other things small businesses can be doing right now to create new opportunities, to create new prospective customers? What are some of the innovative things that they can do?
it obviously depends on the type of business,
Yeah.
but again, every industry has orthodoxies. We have ways that we always have done things. And this has been such a big hit in the head for everybody. I believe this is the time to consider what orthodoxies you're operating under and think about, how do I move not completely away from it, but how do I take steps to do other things too, to make my business into more of a portfolio of products and services.
One other element I might add to that is think of your business as a subscription service rather than a transactional one. And what I mean by that, and maybe we can use churches as an example. So some churches have been very aggressive about getting giving online. They use apps, they use subscription services, and I'm aware of several churches who have really been successful at that, and they've seen their giving drop with attendance, but their giving is down 20 to 25%. Other churches who, for traditional reasons or whatever the case may be, have seen and don't have a lot of online giving, have seen giving drop 80%. The difference is really not in your belief system as it relates to taking donations by credit card. It has more to do with a transactional view of your business model versus subscription. And if you view yourself as selling something that you will repeatedly sell to your customer, can you split off some of that revenue from transactions to subscriptions, create more loyalty so that people, if you were running a hair salon and you have a customer that comes in once a month, you could pre-sell a year's worth of haircuts at a 10% discount as long as that money is sort of committed. We used to write post-dated checks, not post-dated checks, but committed with a credit card. And the selling point could be if you want to come in more than once a month, you can, but that's the fixed rate. Now, in reality, the research shows people don't actually overutilize their subscriptions typically. Netflix right now might be the exception to that. But anything you can do to imagine your business as selling an ongoing relationship with your customers and build them in that way, as opposed to just a series of transactions. In my world, the stock market, the stocks that are subscription oriented trade for 2 times the multiple that the transaction oriented businesses do. And in a lot of cases, they're not that different. It's just how the leaders think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask the panel something that came in through our chat. What advice, dear panelists, would you give to somebody, an entrepreneur seeking to actually start a business now during this time? Would you say it's a great opportunity, or is it a little bit too risky right now?
I think all times are a great opportunity to start your own business and set your own life. We all trust in God to deliver us. So if that's something that's coming to your mind right now, I would explore it and see what it actually happens.
I would say it's very important not to waste a crisis. And so this is an example of a time where business is kind of turbulent. It's as good or better time than it has been in the past for starting a company.
Yeah, there's a reason that in the Bible, the most common negative admonition is to not be afraid. It's to not tell a lie. It's to not be afraid. You feel afraid, but don't be afraid. And the result, as far as investing goes, your expected future return and success moves in the opposite direction to how afraid people are. But maximum fear is when you're likely to make your best deals, buy your best stocks, and start the greatest companies. So as much as you might feel like you should hesitate, I would go with what Gary and Mary are saying and just go ahead and do it if you have the planning all together.
This might not be the time to go out and sign a lease for brick and mortar space, but nothing says that you can't go out and start working on that Facebook identity that can put things out there, test the marketplace with your idea. You can control the amount based on what you're putting into your social media that you're using, and it gives you flexibility to be able to try different things. And the best part about these social media things is the cost, as in most cases there isn't any unless you start getting into targeted marketing. But it's a good place to test the waters, and this is a perfect environment to test it in. And maybe you look at how you can do what you're doing, but maybe in a different configuration. You know, maybe you do end up with a Lyft driver or Uber driver delivering your product, or maybe you can make the product at home, or maybe you can engage the family in that. Good place to test the waters with all those opportunities.
I would agree, Greg, and I would also, we're going to have to break free from our past ideas, and that's scary, because this time is scary enough as it is. But I think we're going to have to really sit back and say, you know, how many different ways can I look at different things? You know, what different products can I sell? What new services might I come up with? And if we don't do that now, we're going to be so busy once things are back in order again that we won't do it. So, you know, take the time and do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, just to pick up on that point, I think maybe to use slightly different words, you know, what's the big trends that might emerge from this? In the financial crisis, it was that the big mortgage lenders were capital constrained because they had to rebuild capital for years and years. So the new home building activity, you know, just didn't come back for a very long period of time. And you know, real estate prices improved, but it really changed the construction industry, and it changed the financial services industry for quite an extended period of time. I think, you know, if you believe what may happen in sort of geopolitics, you may have small, medium-sized manufacturing rebuilt a little bit in the West as people become less reliant on China, particularly in the healthcare sector, even for generics. So if there's a business that you had that maybe got or are aware of that got replaced by lower cost manufacturing in China, that may come back. Now might be a time to investigate that type of thing. But just think in terms of those things that have changed that may also continue in the future. One of the interesting things that's been happening on social media is the reduction in pollution, just even from a couple of weeks of people driving less. And I think that will result in an accelerated move towards battery operated vehicles and less burning of fossil fuels. That is I have a model. It's a 30-40 year trend by the time we surpass miles driven with battery driven vehicles, but that could accelerate significantly. And so anything clean energy related, the governor of Virginia has actually passed a clean energy mandate during this crisis that wasn't widely noticed. But I think the desire of the citizenry to have a cleaner environment may be something that's lasting now that they can see the Himalayas and you can see LA's skyline and all those great things that are now visible that weren't as visible when the economy was a little bit more robust.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move solely into the question and answer period, I want to get some input from each of you on where you think this is going. What's going to happen in the next 30, 60, 90 days? And I realize that this is speculative, so just put on your prophecy hat and figure out what you think is going to happen in that next 90-day time frame.
I'm going last. I don't know.
Well, I get one thing I would say is I don't believe that there's going to be a switch thrown and then we'll be right back to where we were before. You know, when I say the economy is going to start in fits and starts, what's going to happen is some areas will loosen up very quickly, and then unfortunately people will get the COVID virus and they'll have to clamp back down again. So, you know, this is not going to be a nice straight line, but it still is a time of great opportunity.
I agree with Gary. I think there's going to be certain areas that do get the opportunity to go back to work. I don't think they're going to go back to the work the way it was before, though. I still think you're going to have social distancing with no more than so many people in a certain area. Everybody is going to have to be wearing masks. I actually see us wearing masks out into 2022 when they actually figure out a way to make sure that these viruses are not going to be transported anymore, you know, between people to people. So although I expect, you know, hopefully by like the second week in May, most areas are moving again. They will be moving in a different manner. You will have to always wear a mask, and you will have to keep social distancing for probably as long as 2 years.
Yeah, maybe I'll just take sort of a macroeconomic approach. I think because I think I really believe the wisdom of my colleagues' responses with respect to the virus and people's attitudes. The macroeconomic effect is probably a 30% drop in U.S. output. The $6 trillion that the Fed and the CARES Act are putting back into the economy is $20 trillion. I think they see 6/20ths of the economy gone in terms of activity right now. So that's 30%. So it's pretty dramatic. So that will start to improve in probably beginning in the second half of May and beginning of June. But I think Gary's comments are correct, and I think it will improve. Probably feel like it's improving quickly. It'll be at a double-digit rate, but off a very low base. But I don't think we'll be back to $21 trillion in real economic activity until you get to the second half of 2021. So it's going to take a while to repair this, if for no other reason than people have to figure out how they want to interact with others in their communities and in the economy in general. So it will improve. It'll feel much better in June, but we won't be back to where we were for some time.
Yeah, I would say that I'd agree with that. I would say even it's going to be September, October before we feel a little bit of it breaking free. So.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurs to figure out how to do things differently, do things in a new way, do things inventively and innovatively. So it's going to present some real opportunities for people to, and like everybody has said on this panel, it's a great time to start something. So let me shift over, and Doris, I know you have been monitoring the questions. Can you pose some questions to us?
Yes, and there are some amazing and wonderful questions coming in. So I just want to throw this one out. Somebody read this morning that an article that indicated that 80% of small businesses were actually at risk right now. And so how do small businesses inoculate themselves in these times to survive, especially, you know, as they are competing against larger businesses? And then also I want to tie in another question that I saw coming through. It's slow going to get a hold of those monies that are out there right now.
Yeah, maybe on just the speed comment, and then Mary or Gary can pick up on sort of the inoculation element. But what I've heard from people who have applied is that most have heard back on approval or not. Most have not been funded, and some have not heard back on approval at all, and they're, you know, about a week into their loan application process. So I think a good amount of the $350 billion in the first program has been committed, but very little of it has actually hit the street yet. And I think that's what's to come second half of April and into May. And I think by that time, you'll start to feel more liquidity. But right now, most people that I've talked to have received an approval. I haven't heard of anybody that's been turned down once their application's been fixed. Some have had to resubmit applications for missing information. But even there, the updated guidance from the SBA is essentially approve whatever you have. So it's going to take some time. There'll be frustrations. These are banks ultimately, but the money is intended to flow and the government's going to spend it.
Yeah, what I would say too is resources are very, very important, but we're at the point where resourcefulness will be equally as important. So this is the time to think about a new future for you and your organization.
Yeah, I think being innovative, like Gary and I have both said a few times, is going to be a big deal for you. Small businesses, they really need to maybe look at what they've been doing and then see if there's any way that they can bring that online in any form, in sales, in products, in videos, in ebooks, whatever it is that you can consider doing right now to get you through to the next step is the best thing you could possibly do.
So it appears maybe we lost Gary Oster there. Maybe he can join us back. That these are the joys of dealing with internet and everybody streaming at the same time, right? But the other another question that came in is how that those that stimulus that is now being prepared by the government, by the federal government, how will that impact long-term our national debt? What should we be worried about it, or should we just say, well, that's a problem for another time?
Yes, absolutely, we should worry, but not right now. Usually, an explosion in national debt would be followed by inflation and a devaluation of the currency. The odd situation that we're in, and my prior comments about no free lunch notwithstanding, the US is the reserve currency, and the alternatives to the US dollar are not very attractive. The euro has its own issues, obviously, with disunity. The yen, there's no secular growth in Japan. China is not a viable option. It's not a free-floating currency. And Bitcoin and other virtual currencies are not mature enough and certainly not reliable enough. So until the US dollar is not in its place as reserve currency, you do have some ability to grow your national deficit for a time without seeing inflation. In the medium term, I think there's a lot of risk, especially now that oil prices are acting in a deflationary fashion right now. That will run through the economy, and eventually alternatives like Bitcoin will mature. So the US won't be the reserve currency forever if we continue to behave this way, at which point we will have a severe problem. Until then, when there's a global demand problem, globally inflation is not an issue, and we're the reserve currency, we do have an ability over a medium term, which is an intentionally ambiguous term, to not keep it on the front burner in terms of our concerns.
Thank you. All right, so let me see. I have another question about the restaurant industry. What is the panel's post-pandemic assessment of the restaurant industry going forward? Are they just going to pick up where they left off? I mean, we know, right? Restaurants are hurting right now, understandably so. Revenues are down. Even the innovative solutions that they've come up with curbside pickup and delivery are not making up entirely for their usual revenue. So what do you think? Do you have a sense of where this is going post-pandemic?
I would say that so much depends on how many people can gather in a single room. And, I have a feeling we're going to start out with a very small number of people who can gather, like 10 or something like that. But if that's the case, that's going to be murder for restaurants. So in my estimation, how they roll that out is going to be very important to whether restaurants survive or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think at this point they need to consider other forms of bringing revenue in right now. I mean, obviously they still probably offer takeout, but look at your catering. Maybe consider meal plans. Everybody is eating a bunch of snacks we shouldn't be eating right now. So we all would really love somebody else to do our meal planning on Sunday and just have somebody deliver it. Your local restaurant, we all want to help local. So use your social to do those types of plans. I've shared plenty from, pizza parlors that are doing pizza kits for little kids. You drive up, you pick it up and you take it home, and then the kids make their own pizza at home. Be innovative in other ways of getting your food into people's houses And there might be a little understanding that people don't have as much money to spend right now. So you might want to take that into consideration in regards to coupons or, you know, gift certificates that have double value or something like that. You want to look at what you're offering and what you can add to it to get you further down the line, because as we've all said, it's going to be a little while.
Yeah, I would just add, I guess, a finance perspective, I always think of it in terms of asset turnover. So if the objective of the restaurant was to load as many people into the restaurant as they could, that's not a good strategy in this environment. So that means probably increasing your margins to improve your returns. And so narrowing your menu to things that are high margin, knowing what your margins are. It probably means reorienting your dining room so there's more space so people are comfortable. And on the takeout side, this is just an observation. You should never use a market survey of one, but my son was delivering Postmates, and half of the orders didn't succeed because the mom and pop restaurants who signed up for Postmates had changed their hours and not notified Postmates. So you have a customer ordering and paying, the driver going to pick it up, and the restaurant's closed. So you have to get your takeout business sorted. All of those things can get you the revenue back that you may lose by not being able to pack your restaurant. But think of it in terms of how hard you're turning your assets and what kind of margins you're generating. If you can fix those two things, you can actually earn as high a return as you were before.
I saw one restaurant owner, talked with one restaurant owner who is using this time to go out and get customer information. He's contacting his customer base. He's finding out what the dates are for birthdays, what the dates are for anniversaries, what are the dates for major events in their lives or for their kids or something. When he can open again, he's not going to go for trying to get the most people in the restaurant. He's going to go for setting aside a small table for a special event, an anniversary, where they can order some flowers and a bottle of wine and take the revenue that normally for a meal would be around $40, $50 and be able to bump it up to a special occasion rate of a couple of $100. So he's preparing now for those small numbers that will come in, but he's increasing the quality of what he's going to offer to them in a personalized restaurant service that will generate more revenue in a shorter period of time with less customers.
Interesting.
He might also want to consider, you know, like we said before, I think Andrew said it, some subscription, you know, even to a restaurant, that's not a bad idea to have a subscription kind of deal where you pay a certain amount and you get a dinner or something, or you get a takeout meal or something like that. A subscription model where you're getting money recurring every single month, whether they use it or don't use it, right? I mean, they do it with tanning, they do it with cards, they do it with everything. Why not with a restaurant? If it's a restaurant you frequent, you're going to have to obviously watch the subscription levels, but you would definitely not have any problem doing it. We pay for everything else.
So panelists, we have to bring it to a close, but I do want to ask this final question, and I promise all the attendees will get to your questions even via email and after the fact. So we just don't have the time to address all of the questions, but we so appreciate every single question, and we'll do a follow-up with you for sure. So here's the question that I believe is very important also for us as Regent University. Panel, please discuss the importance of faith and how it relates to business in a time like this.
I think it's a tremendous opportunity if you take the first 5 words of the Bible. In the beginning, God created. This is the time of the entrepreneur when they can create and start something new and look for ways to start something new and not let traditional ways or obstacles prevent them from being able to do that. So I see this as a tremendous time to be able to draw upon one's faith and be creative with those skills, abilities, talents, and giftings that God has given us.
Very good. I've also have been taking more time now to read the Bible and to draw closer to God. And I think when we get into a situation like this where everything is kind of uneasy and we don't really see easy ways to go, now's the time to really draw close to God and listen to what he has for us.
Yeah, I'd have to say, for me, the same thing. I mean, God is with me every day, or with all of us. We all know that. And I think when you take that risk, if you're thinking about it, believe that that's what he wants you to do. You know, if you're concerned, remember he's not going to bring you anything that you can't get through without him. You know, these are, in regards to your business, it's the same thing. Step back, look at it like Gary said, and see if he's telling you what you need to do. We just need to listen.
Yeah. There's a reason that the Bible is the best-selling book of all time. It has a lot of wisdom. So if you're not in the habit of reading it, you may want to pick up and see what's there, especially in Proverbs as a place to start if you're a business person. But there's two quick scriptures, if I might, Dr. Gomez. One is in James. It says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God. None of us have a playbook for COVID-19. It hasn't happened before. There hasn't been a global pandemic that's destroyed global demand overnight. So if you are afraid and you need wisdom, ask God for it. And if you believe it, he'll give it to you. The second thing is, I think it's important for businesses to build their culture in this time. There's a scripture that says, always do good to everyone, but especially to those that are the household of faith. In that context, the organization is the church. So that's why it's the household of faith. But there's a big debate about what stakeholders to take care of. And I think if you're running a small business, you're the owner. So ultimately you reap the profits, but it's really about your employees, that next circle, in my opinion. Take care of them, do good to them, build your culture as an organization. And I think you will benefit from that over time, whatever that means to you in the context of your business. Your customers, they're important, but I think the employees as the first circle out are really the ones that the Bible would suggest are the most important.
Wonderful. This is a good word. I'm afraid we are at the end of our hour. I know we could continue talking, but please know this is not the last webinar that we are offering either. We are coming back next Monday, April 20th, with another part 2 of a business-focused webinar, a different panel, different contributors, equally important, equally knowledgeable in the areas of business. So please make sure to join us. We'll send the information out. You can register for that. And then after that, we're going to offer another panel on the importance of how to lead through a crisis like that. I think it's very, very important, and it applies to business and any other organization. So those are important topics, and it is truly our joy that we can come alongside all of you to help, to support, to encourage. I want you to walk away from this evening knowing that you are not alone. We are in this together, and we are here for you. You have our contact information. The email invitation and the confirmation you received has an email in there where you can continue to send your questions. We are here for you. Consider us your resource. We want to bless you, we want to encourage you, and we will do everything that we can as Regent University School of Business and Leadership to support you through COVID-19, and we will make it to the other side because God will be faithful. So allow me, panelists, thank you for your tremendous knowledge, all that you've given, your tremendous knowledge that you've shared so freely and generously. Dr. Stone, thank you for being such a wonderful moderator. Allow me to just close in a word of prayer, if you may. Father, we thank you for your goodness and your faithfulness. And Father, I pray that you bless every single one of our attendees, Father, their businesses, their families. Father, may they not lack anything. Father, may your provision come through swiftly and on time. And Father, I pray that an entrepreneurial spirit will spring forth in this group. Father, I pray that ideas will be born even tonight, Father, where people have been wondering, what am I going to do and how I'm going to do it. Father, I pray that you will provide the answer even as they sleep. So Father, I pray for your perfect peace that surpasses all understanding. Father, we ask for your peace, not the peace that the world gives, but the peace that can only come from you, to envelop this group, strengthen our business community, and be with us, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Thank you all so very, very much. It was good to spend time with you together. We'll see each other next week on Monday. Blessings. Bye-bye.